Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, I will be going over my September wrap-up, all of the books that I managed to get to in the month of September. September was a very weird and interesting reading month for me personally, and partially because, well, not partially, a lot of that is due to a book bet that I did with Stacy, my girlfriend, and our bet was who can read the most sequels in like a certain amount of time. And yeah, I did a lot of reading, and yeah, enough of the preamble. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So before I jump into the book bet stuff with Stacy, because that's a lot of books that I have to talk about, let's talk about the Stephen King books that I read in the month of September. So of course you guys know that I read Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because I already have a dedicated book review, which I'll link down below just in case you haven't seen it. But yeah, this was a pretty fair disappointment for me. I didn't hate this book by any means, but it was kind of meh for like the last 2/3 of it. I loved the first 200 pages, and then after that, it just went downhill for me. 3-star book, nothing too special, kind of meh. And also, we're still trucking along with the Stephen King short story book club over on my Discord server, and we're still continuing with Nightmares and Dreamscapes. I can definitely remember now why this is my least favorite short story collection. It's not terrible like I remembered it being. From what I remembered, the only story that I absolutely loved was Suffer the Little Children, which is still my favorite in this collection. But definitely at the beginning, there are some really good ones. But right now, where we are, there's so many bad ones, or just so many ones that really don't work for me personally. So yeah, this is still definitely my least favorite. I can't actually wait till next year when we'll start Everything's Eventual. That one is much better than this one. And also another thing with this is that different stories are getting different reactions from different people because, you know, short stories are very subjective. So whenever I put up the poll for these short stories, it's really interesting to see who loves them, who hates them, who thinks they're meh. For me, most of these stories are just kind of meh. Like, they're not terrible, but they're really not that good either, or they're just boring, or they're too damn long. But yeah, we're still having a good time with Nightmares and Dreamscapes. I also reread Needful Things, which this book is amazing. I gave it 5 stars. Definitely one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books. Possibly top 10 now. Maybe it's definitely top 15 for sure. But it'll be interesting to see when I go back and rank all of his books again. This one might make my top 10 list because it's so damn good. I love the slow buildup of tension and chaos that ensues in this book. And definitely one of the best Stephen King villains of Leland Gaunt, who is the owner of Needful Things. And this book is just so damn good, even though Stephen King himself narrates the audiobook and he's not really a great narrator. It was fun to listen to the book. He actually did a fairly good job with this audiobook. And yeah, it's one of my all-time favorites, and I'm glad I got a chance to reread it, so 5 stars. And at the beginning of the book, before I started my book bet with Stacy, I actually read a few books before that. The first one that I read for the month was Jaws by Peter Benchley. And this is the book that the movie is based off of. I've seen the movie several times, of course, being a horror movie junkie, but I've never read the book. And this was actually Patrick's choice for me to read because he won Guess the Beat, and whoever wins Guess the Beat every month gets to choose a book for me to read. And this was his choice. And yeah, it was pretty good. I'm not going to say it's perfect. It read kind of like Michael Crichton. Like, Michael Crichton is one of my favorite authors, and he definitely has that kind of style that Michael Crichton has. There was like one scene in particular that I just felt was not out of place, but it was just so weird because like the rest of the book was written very well and very methodically, and then all of a sudden we get this random chapter I won't go into it for spoilers, but like it definitely knocked the rating down. So I'm like, what are we even doing here? But really, the book was very stellar, very well paced, good characters. Overall, it was very good, and I gave it 4 stars. Next book that I picked up was Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson, and this is the second book in the Mistborn Era 2 saga, not trilogy. And I'm rereading these books in anticipation for The Lost Metal, Book 4, coming out in November. So I read this, very much enjoyed it. Again, not perfect like Stormlight Archive is. Like that's perfect for me. But Era 2 is very good. I gave Book 1 and Book 2 4.5 stars. I'm probably going to wait to reread Book 3 in November because, for October, for the Stephen King readathon, I'm mainly going to be focusing on horror and thrillers. And then probably in November will be very much fantasy filled. So look forward to that. And yeah, I really did enjoy Shadows of Self, 4.5 stars. Another fantasy reread that I reread was The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch, which is the third Gentleman Bastards book. Now, I was super excited to read this one because I had forgotten a lot of this book. I haven't really read the whole trilogy in maybe like 6 years or more, and I really didn't remember this one very much, but I loved this book. I really forgot how much I loved this. Of course, 5 stars. Gentleman Bastards might be my third favorite fantasy series, just behind A Song of Ice and Fire and Stormlight. I know I love Dark Tower, but even the Dark Tower books the Dark Tower series has bad books. But the Gentleman Bastards, they're all 5 stars. I love Locke and John. I love the humor. Of course, I love Michael Page's narration. It's so well done and so creative. And I love these books. And yeah, I love this series. So, yeah, Republic of Thieves is 5 stars. All right, now we're getting into the plethora of books that I read for the book bet that I did with Stacy. And like I said, the book bet was to read the most sequels in like a certain time span. Originally, it was supposed to be 7 days, but I think we reduced it down to 5 days just because we were, especially me, like I was just getting so burnt out, and we kind of just called it quits. And I was so nervous because like I called it quits, or we called it quits, even though I wasn't sure how many she had read and she wasn't sure how many I had read. But the total amount that I read was 11 books, and she ended up reading 8 books. Now, if we would have went for a couple more days, she probably would have caught up to me, but still, like I read a shit ton, and I have a lot of books to talk about. A lot of them are rereads, but some of them aren't. So let's get to them. The first one I'll talk about is Dawn Shard by Brandon Sanderson. Like I said, I love Stormlight, and this is a Stormlight novella. I especially liked this one, especially more than the other one in the series. I don't even remember what it's called. It's got Lift in it. Oh man, I don't remember that one. Anyway, Dawn Shard is great. 4 stars. It has one of my favorite characters in it. I don't know if I should say who it is for spoiler reasons, but one of my all-time favorite Stormlight characters is in this one, and it's so good. Not perfect, but it is very entertaining. And yeah, I gave it 4 stars. And then I've got 4 books by the same author because these were very simple to just binge through. I'll just go ahead and tell you. Agatha Christie. Her books are very short, and I have a crap ton of her books, and these are technically sequels, so I could count them. I got Taken at the Flood, which is a Poirot book. I've got By the Pricking of My Thumb, which is a Tommy and Tuppence book. I've got Curtain, which is actually the last Poirot book chronologically. And then I've got The Moving Finger by Agatha. Well, obviously these are by Agatha Christie. The Moving Finger, which is a Miss Marple one. Miss Marple, I've had a bad time with Miss Marple, but the last few that I've read of her series, they've actually been pretty good. This one was 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. Curtain was pretty good, although I could kind of see it coming a little bit. It was still fun, and I could definitely see this being like a fitting end to the Poirot saga. By the Pricking of My Thumb was definitely the least favorite. This one was fine. I gave it 3 stars. Most of it was kind of boring. And then Taken at the Flood was a very serviceable Poirot book. I really did enjoy it. I think it was like 3.5 or 4 stars. So yeah, I binged through a lot of those. I probably could have kept going with those because like I said, I have a ton of Poirot books. But let's keep it moving along here. Another one that I read was After Ever After, which is the sequel to Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie, which, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know that that's one of my all-time favorite books, and you probably didn't even know that there was a sequel. And for the longest time, I didn't know either. I actually read this for the first time like a few years ago, so this is a reread. It's not quite as good as the first book, but it is still very good. I gave it 4.5 stars. And then I read Farewell Summer by Ray Bradbury. Of course, Ray Bradbury, one of my all-time favorite authors. This is technically a sequel to the books Dandelion Wine and Something Wicked This Way Comes. They all take place in the same town, Greentown, and they have similar characters. So it is technically a sequel. It's very short. I had a lot of fun revisiting this book. It was a reread for me, and I think I gave it 4.5 stars. And some other rereads that were very fun were part of the John Cleaver series, which John Cleaver is one of my all-time favorite series. I reread book 5, Over Your Dead Body, and the last book in the series, Nothing Left to Lose, book 6. This one, I really did not remember a lot of it going into it, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it. I think going back, I originally rated this 3.5 stars, but reading it for a second time, I gave it 4.5 stars, and it was so good. And of course, it's book 5, so I can't really say too much about it, but it was so good. Nothing Left to Lose. It's a solid conclusion, but it is probably my least favorite in the series. It's still really good, though. Like, it's hard to just, again, it's book 6. It's the final book. I can't talk about it a lot here, but they were very fun rereads for me. And then 2 other books, guys, I think that's 9 books. The other 2 books that I read for the book bet were book 3 and book 4 in the Fred the Vampire Accountant series. I think one of them is called Bloody Acquisitions, and the other one is called Fangs of Freelance. I think book 1 was really good, and then book 2, it kind of felt the same, but then book 3 just started out with a bang, and I loved most of book 3. I gave that one 4.5 stars. It was really good. And then book 4 was pretty good, but it wasn't like spectacular like book 3 was. I think I gave it around 4 stars. And again, these are like way further in the series, so I can't really say too much about it, but I do really love listening to them. They're narrated, of course, by Kirby Hayborn, so I can just put it on and just get lost in the story and just have a really fun time with Fred. And yeah, it's definitely a series I plan on continuing. So yeah, those are all of the books that I managed to read for the book bet. And by the time I finished like book 11 and I was reading book 12, I was just so done. I was so burned out, but I did win. And by winning the book bet, Stacy now has to read Imaginary Friend. I think originally we said like the book had to be read in October, but I'm kind of just being more lenient on it. Like whenever she can get to it, that would be great. Imaginary Friend, of course, is one of my all-time favorite horror books, so it'll be very fun to see what she thinks of Imaginary Friend. And I do have a couple more books to talk about here. After the book bet was over, I definitely took a few days off of reading where I just didn't read anything. I think I just watched football or YouTube or whatever. But then I just decided, hey, you know what? Let's just jump back into my all-time favorite series. And that's what I did. I started Storm of Swords. I wanted to try to finish it before October starts because obviously I'm not going to be reading this during the Stephen King readathon. But I'm only currently like halfway through it. So I'll probably finish it up in November. Again, you know, my all-time favorite series, probably my favorite book of all time. And then hopefully I can finish the series out before 2023, before January, because one of my goals for 2023 is to read a lot, or to reread a lot less, because I've just been doing so much rereading this year. I really need to start focusing on getting to some of these newer books, or new to me books that I haven't read. Like if I would have like substituted even half of my rereads for new to me books, I could have made such a bigger dent into my TBR. But at the same time, rereading is just so much fun. And shameless plug, I do have a video about rereading, so if you want to go check that out, you can do that. But yeah, Storm of Swords, it's great. And then I have one more book to talk about that I will finish before October starts, and that would be Jade City. And the reason that I'm reading this is because Boiled Jellyfish, and if you don't know who that is, you can go check out his YouTube channel, and he's all over the Wizardly Duo Discord. He won Guess the Beach for the month of September, and his book for me to read in October was Jade City, and I'm deciding to read it before October because it is a little chunky, and I wanted to try to read it before the readathon. And yeah, it's pretty good. I've been interested to read this book for quite a while. I've owned this book for such a long time, and I'm glad that he picked this book because I'm finally getting to it, and I am enjoying it, and I have like a little less than 100 pages to go. It's not fantastic, but it is pretty good. I think I'm leaning towards like 3.5, maybe 4 stars. I am definitely interested to pick up the sequel in November, so hopefully I can get my hands on a copy of that, maybe around my birthday, if anyone wants to buy it for me. Good God. Oh, also, another sequel book that I forgot to mention was that I read the sequel to The Boy Who Failed Show and Tell, which is by Jordan Sonnenblick, same guy who wrote Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie. I read The Boy Who Failed Dodgeball, and this book was pretty good. Nowhere near as good as the first book, The Boy Who Failed Show and Tell, but it was still a lot of fun to listen to. Not much to say about it, but yeah, it was a fun listen. So I think that's all of the books that I managed to read in the month of September. So quite busy, a lot of finished books, but again, a lot of these were on the short side because of the book bet. I was just plowing through a bunch of books, but I'm definitely proud of the amount of books that I was able to finish in the month of September. All right, so that is my September wrap up, where I went through all the books that I managed to get through in the month of September. What was your favorite book that you read in the month of September? And do you have any opinions on any of the books that I talked about in this video? Please leave all of your lovely comments down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and the Book Astronomer Discord. And if you want to financially support me, go check out my Patreon page and see what that's about. And I also have my Amazon wish list if anyone would like to purchase me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a fantastic doodly day.